with a very successful neuromuscular therapy practice in Houston, Texas, had, as one interviewer put it, the financial resources to provide the right coaching, the right equipment, and the right opportunities to help his son Eric involve himself in sports and excel in table tennis. Kenny taught his son to ride a bike at the age of 3 by removing the seat. This forced little Eric to stand and build strength in his legs. The training wheels were then lifted, not so far that Eric would fall, but far enough that he had to learn to balance himself without them. Soon, young Eric was riding a bike on his own. And by the time he was 6, that bike was now a motorcycle. That's right, a motorcycle. And he was into motocross racing round the ups, downs, and sharp turn, closed course terrain that would later graduate him at 9 into the cycling national championships at the Astrodome. Watch out. Here he comes. Whoops. Ambitious though Eric was, that bike was a little too big for him. And what did Eiley Guo there know about bike riding? He and wife Nan taught table tennis. Which brings to mind this photo. That is not the way to hold a racket, Eric. Show him, Hanan. Yes, much better. Though the back end needs a little work. Father Kenny was a table tennis enthusiast much interested in offering companionable advice to Eric and keeping the two of them physically fit. Says nutritionist Kenny, sugar and white flour? Do you know how toxic that is for muscles? The only way to relieve the stress of that poison is to give the muscles, deep massages. Here, Kenny is practicing on 5-time U.S. champion Sean O'Neill. You remember that, Sean? Huh? Did he hurt you? Oh, okay. Points are held for about 8 seconds, pushing directly on the muscle just a 1/4 inch at a time. So, like father, like son. Both vegetarians, both runners. At age 9, Eric would run a full 26-mile marathon in reportedly, I say reportedly, 4 hours, 6 minutes, 8 seconds. Is that true?
Yes.
Which he once said was his greatest athletic accomplishment. Of course, with intensity like that, it was understood that Eric, weaned on a miniature table his father had made for him, was able to win the under-9 events at both the 1985 U.S. Open and Junior Nationals. That year, his dad, as mentor, coach, took him to the World Table Tennis Championships in Sweden. While there, Kenny shot 180 hours of instructive world-class tapes, and Eric got to hit 15 minutes with Poland's superstar Gruba. In 1986 and 1987, in the 11s, 12s, and 14s at the U.S. Open, U.S. Closed, Junior Nationals, and Junior Olympics, Eric and his friend, doubles partner, and arch rival Randy Cohen would battle it out, winning some, losing some. Take a bow, Randy, where are you? In 1988, U.S. promising players Derek May, Oscar Melvin, Brian Pace, and Eric, with Father Kenny as chaperone, were invited to Japan to train at their butterfly sponsor's famed dojo. For a month, the boys worked at their games 6 to 8 hours a day. 12-year-old Eric's only complaint was that fruit, so necessary to him, was very expensive. As the 90s arrived, Eric and Randy continued their rivalry. with an improved Randy winning their closed U.S. Under-16 final. About this time, 15-year-old Eric had taken to wearing a stud earring. Yep, dug out his earlobe hole with a safety pin. Sterilized, of course. But though he used ice, yes, he said, it hurt a lot. Larry Hodges spoke of the Eric-Randy rambunctious friendship, and that rooming them together is said to be a recipe for an all-night party. Maybe so, but he and Eric continued their winning partnership play with the 91 U.S. Open under-18 doubles, defeating the formidable brother-sister team of under-14 boys champion Barney Reed and under-16 girls champion Christy Reed, who trained for 6 weeks at Mrs. Sandberg's Angby Club just outside Stockholm. But surprise, Eric lost the 91 and 92 closed boys high school titles to Jason St. George. A year ago, rated just 1750. You remember those matches?
I do.
Huh?
I do.
Yeah. But he balanced somewhat by winning the 93 U.S. Open under-18s over the Canadian junior, Canadian #1, Pierre-Paul Rouleau. At the 95 U.S. Open, Eric sneakered by Reed 22-24 in the third, after Barney had gotten past Randy 26-24 in the third. Clearly, with the increased competition he faced, Eric was no lock for the under-22s. Indeed, in that event at the 93 U.S. Open, he again escaped under-18 winner Barney 28-26 in the third in the semis, but fell to Todd Swears in the final. In mid-90s, under-22 finals play, Eric split matches with Sean Lonergan, whose game had dramatically improved after he joined the resident training program at the Olympic Center in Colorado Springs. Here's a shot of the RT Pers. See anyone you recognize? Well, at this point, I recognize, most of you know him, he's been around, Scott Price. Before I return to finish my introduction, Scott's going to share with you some memorable moments he's had with Eric. Scott?
Stay with the coach.
You know, we all know Eric as a player, but I thought I would mention some funny things that happened to us after doing 45 years of table tennis exhibitions and some 3,000 shows, even though I'm only 26 years old. I have to talk about a couple of fun times that we had. The first exhibition that I did with Eric, he was 6 years old, and I flew to the Hyatt Regency in Houston, and I was standing on the table, and I had asked, you know, when is the player going to arrive? And he was on the other side of the table, but he was only about 3 inches above the table at the time. And that was our first exhibition together. I think, Eric, you'll remember that. We had many over the years, but I want to just tell two of the very strange ones that we had. We performed for the World Huntsman Games in Utah one year, and Eric and I were asked to do the opening ceremonies to welcome 2,500 athletes, and Joe Namath was the other guest speaker who was going to open and do the closing of the ceremony. We never got to see Joe Namath, but who was waiting for us was Maureen McGovern, the singer who sang Got to Be a Morning After or a Morning After. So Eric, I'll never forget his face, but my job was to walk up into the hills of an amphitheater and meet an Indian tribe leader who was coming with the torch to hand me the torch. And I went up into the hills and received the torch, and I jogged back with Eric into the stadium with Maureen McGovern of all people, and we lit the opening ceremonies. I just thought it was a very strange one. I thought I would give Eric that moment there. The other one was we did a tour for General Motors, and this is just a funny memory that, of course, we'll never forget, but we were on tour for General Motors for about 8 months, and at that time I knew Eric had to be a doctor because he was receiving some $500 or $1,000 a day for that performance and was buying $300 belts, $500 shoes. I mean, he was 16 years old and coming back with these items, so I knew he was going to have to make a living somehow. And of course, I'm very proud that he finished medical school and finished that time there. It was a total turnaround, especially when he was 15 years old. I had to send Randy and Eric home from that resident training program because a beer appeared in their room. I just thought I would mention that. That was a dark time. But in finishing up that General Motors tour, I just wanted, for those of you that perform exhibitions, you always need to make sure that your microphone is off. Because we were behind talking about these two girls that had the goulash for Eric at the time. We started talking about these girls, and 3 minutes into the conversation, I looked down and saw that my mic was on, the audience was in the audience, and we were talking about these two girls. So I just thought I'd mention that. But Eric, we've done almost 250 exhibitions together around the country. I wanted to congratulate you on your international. And also as for the other people that were inducted, I know all of you for so many years. Congratulations again to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. You always made exhibitions fun. Eric is now 20. By 1995, he'd come of age, paid his competitive dues. After his success at Olympic festivals, a first in the mixed, a second in the singles, and a first in the men's doubles, his future awaited him. Said his father, "Eric's not always as motivated as he could be, but when he does try, he's great. When he wants to do it, for Eric, he'll be terrific." At the 1996 Olympic trials, Eric lost his first 5 matches, but kept trying, wanted to stay in there for Eric's sake, and won his last 6 to finish in 5th place. That determination also showed in a match he lost to U.S. team member Swiris. At 1-1 in games, Eric downed 20-14 in the 3rd, won 8 straight, then down 20-16 in the 5th, deuced it before losing. After having won both the U.S. Closed and North American Doubles Championships with Barney Reed, Eric was serious about improving his game. He modernized his technique, shortened his stroke, played closer to the table, and through multi-ball practice 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, he improved his footwork. To be even more fit, he followed a very strict vegetarian diet of raw foods. Might risk walnut slivers for a snack, but no dressing on the salad that ruined the taste of the lettuce. There also had to be times during the day for meditation. "I'd like to get up to 2 hours a day," he said. "It really helps my concentration when I get out there to play." And maybe he needed 2 trips daily to Father Kenny's clinic for physical therapy treatments. To prepare for the 1999 Pan Am trials, Eric trained 2 months in China, then went to Sweden for 3 weeks of competitive play. So, was the effort worth it? "Played my best ever," he said. "Finished 2nd. Off then he went, though not with the new GM car the Olympic Committee had awarded him, to the Mexico Open, won the singles, and with Razvan Cretu the doubles, and came home with $1,200 in spend or save prize money. And from what Scott Price has just said, it got to be spent. For more preparation before the Pan Am Games in Canada, Eric was back in China, doing very intensive serve and attack variations, backhand footwork drills, and buckets of multi-ball practice. Asked, "How many table tennis shoes, sheets of rubber, and balls do you go through in a year?" Eric answered, 20 shoes, 100 sheets of rubber, and over 1,000 balls. In Winnipeg, the U.S., led by repeat U.S. closed champions David Zhuang and Gao Jun, made a clean sweep of the Pan Am titles. Both Eric and Todd Swiris lost in the singles to a Cuban, but Eric showed that his familiar resolve was also golden by winning his 3 preliminary singles, 23-21 in the third, 24-22 in the third, and 22-20 in the third. Later, Eric would represent the U.S. in 2 more Pan Am games, winning a team bronze in the 1997 games in Rio de Janeiro. With 3 world championships in England, Malaysia, and Japan behind him, Eric was ready to take on the new millennium. Very big moments for Eric at the 2001 U.S. Closed. In the singles quarters, he outlasted Sean Lonergan 12-10 in the 7th. Then, with exceptional loops and blocks and a saving 13-11 swing win that broke up an almost disastrous 9, -9, -9, -3 losing streak, he downed David Zhuang. And in the final, he defeated Chen Ninghua, who couldn't recover from a bad -9, -10, -9 start. Eric also did well in the doubles. A men's winner was Zhuang, a mixed runner-up with Yasna. Yasna Fazlik rather. Obviously, he was the star of the tournament and deserved his topics reward. It's a nice shot. In 2002, Texas Wesleyan University Hal Jeffcoat offered Eric a full scholarship. And Eric, along with Yasna, taking advantage of the opportunity, won for self and the university national intercollegiate championships in 2004, 2005, 2006. In between his tournament play that included standout down-to-the-wire wins in 2005 over the Canadian star Pratibhan Peter Paul, and in 2007 over the German-trained professional Stefan Feth, he graduated with a major in biochemistry. So now it's 2008, and 33-year-old Eric, after a quarter century of tournament play, is still in there for Eric's sake. Larry Hodges tells us that Eric is now a second-year medical student at the reincarnation of my doctor, father, and uncle's 1920s Chicago School of Osteopathy. Only 4 more years of learning to go, and as soon as he's done with some lab work and his master's thesis, he'll be able to practice table tennis a lot more. Sure he will. Except, you know, he's not preparing for serious matches when he's writing a thesis on leukotaxinin induces migration and proliferation of fibroblast-like synovial cells through mitogen activities protein kinases. Never mind. He played enough and well enough to be honored here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eric Owens.
Thank you very much, Tim. That was great. And thank you, Scott, as well. Now I want to thank the committee and the board and Donna for inducting me. It's a great honor to be a part of this. I remember getting the email from Donna, and I was pretty excited right away, and I sent it to my parents, and I sent it to some of my close friends because I knew how much it would mean to so many people that took a part in my career. And as Sai said, you can't really accomplish anything without many, many people behind you. So there are a few that I definitely want to acknowledge here tonight. First person, without a doubt, is my dad, right?
Yeah.
So. He is a fanatic about everything that he does, and I remember him trying to start me out when I was around 3 years old, and you know, when you're 3, you can't really do much except for ride a bike without a seat, right? I mean, can you imagine, right? You're a kid. I just remember riding my bike around, and all the kids in the neighborhood were like, "Why don't you have a seat on your bike?" And I didn't really have an answer. I just thought that was normal, but I was like a science experiment to him, where it was like in his mind he's thinking, you know, how can I
but he
get my
said if
kids-
you finish the marathon, he'll put the seat back on, so you get to the marathon.
I didn't know any better, but I just remember in a matter of weeks, I'm the only kid around town riding a bike, and everybody else is in training wheels. So he definitely had something to it. But he was a strict disciplinarian. He taught me a lot about how to accomplish things. So even from a young age, table tennis, it was fun, but it was more of always being the best and having attention to detail and working hard and accomplishing something. And so those skills that I learned in table tennis, I think I've applied them to every aspect of my life. So the things that I've learned from him from the very, very beginning, and he was there through my entire career, traveling with me all the way through 16, 17, 18 years old, where he started getting busy with his clinic and everything, and I sort of took over that discipline role and wanted to be good myself. But even today, when I look at the business that I'm in and everything that I do, I can trace it back to him and the skills that he's instilled within me to accomplish the things that I do on a daily basis. So I want to say thank you so much for everything that you do. The second person is my mom. My mom was always there in the beginning whenever I started playing tennis. My mom was right back there, by the way. She was always there supporting me playing. She had a much more gentle approach, and it wasn't as strict as my dad, so she taught me that I could be good and accomplish a lot, but that there is a fun side to things, and there's a softer side to the discipline. So I think having both of those really complemented me, where I could have the toughness of my dad, but then the softness and the more gentle push of my mom, and I think those two working together really helped me a lot, and they still help me today. So when things get really tough, I can bear down and have the focus that my dad's taught me to, but then at the same time have the lightheartedness and some of the softness that my mom instilled in me. So I thank both of you very, very much, and I love both of you very, very much. The next person is my dear friend Randy Cohen in the back. There's some great pictures of Randy. We had a great rivalry. You know, I met Randy when we were probably around 7 years old, and I remember hearing about a kid in Florida that was really good, and my dad telling me about a kid that was in Florida that I was going to have to play, and I think my dad was videotaping him secretly and writing notes, and we were discussing strategy, and I think that my dad even realized that pretty early on that I think Randy was a little bit better than me, and before we played, so he arranged a practice match because he wanted me to play against Randy to decide, you know, who was better before we actually played in the real event. We played, and my dad was writing down strategy and everything. I mean, it was just like he took things to another level, right? I'm like 6 years old, and he's, you know, studying my rivals and videotaping them secretly. So it's, you know, it's kind of funny. But I remember playing Randy in this practice match, and this was extremely stressful for us, right? So I had heard about this kid. I'm practicing and preparing. And now the parents, they want us to play this practice match. And I just remember how stressful this was, because I did not want to do this, right? This is like my arch rival, and they, you know. So I remember playing Randy. We played this practice match, and I remember I beat him in the practice match, and I went over to shake his hand. I'm sure I've got a smug grin on. And I remember Randy looking right at me and said, "Well, it doesn't really matter because I wasn't trying." Because I wasn't trying. That's exactly how I responded to him. And then we ended up playing the finals, and we had, it was a few years ago, I wish we still had the tape, but I found the tape of the match, and it's just absolutely hilarious. It's like 2 7-year-old kids going at each other's throats, and it was really, really cute, but it's just very, very funny to see it all. But Randy, we pushed each other the whole way. So, you know, it's really important if you're going to have success in anything, you have to have a rival, and you have to have somebody that pushes you every step of the way. And throughout our careers, there were times where Randy was definitely better than me. And it affected me deeply because I always wanted to be the best. And when he was better, it pushed me to train harder. And then I would, improve my level, and we would go back and forth. So that was something that was really, really great, and I think elevated me to another level. And beyond all of that, it turned into a beautiful friendship, because now it's something that, we knew each other when we were 6, 7 years old, and now Randy's turning 40 tomorrow, by the way, so happy birthday. Many years, and it's turned into not only, an arch rivalry where we developed each other's skills to be really good at things, but it's developed into a really great friendship. So I appreciate everything that you've done for me. Minus being in Colorado, it was tough because I remember I moved to Colorado when I was around 12 years old. I spent the year there, and we were really good friends, and I was thinking how much fun it is, but I wish that my best friend would be there. So the next year, my dad pulled me out of Colorado. He wasn't happy with my improvements there. He wanted me to train somewhere else. The next year, Randy was there, and then we were saying the third year we should live together. We should get a room there. And I think we were around 14 or 15. And it lasted 1 month, and then Scott Price kicked us out. It didn't last very long at all. But it's been a great road being a part of him, and I appreciate everything that you've done. Next guy, Razvan, sitting down there. Razvan came over whenever he was around 15 or 16 years old. And I remember the first time I ever saw him play, and I was thinking how good he was. I was very surprised at his level. And it affected me deeply, where I wanted to be as good as him, and I knew that this was sort of like a new, Randy and I were always number 1 and number 2 in our age group, so a guy our age coming in that was potentially better than us was very threatening. And so that was, I don't think he realized what an effect it had on me, but it definitely raised my level, and it raised my competitive spirit. So I appreciate everything that he did, and then it turned into a great friendship, and now we're best friends, the 3 of us, and it's been something really, really great and special. So I appreciate all those competitive matches that we played, and being here today with you. So thank you, Razvan. Another guy, Jim Butler, sitting in the back. Jim, I remember growing up and watching him play, and I always had a great respect for his game and his competitive spirit. He was, I would say, a little bit of a generation ahead of me. So it was, I felt like he was a mentor and someone that I looked up to, but I didn't have a lot of interaction with him until I was around 20 or 21 years old. And at that point, I think he was 70 in the world. And I was just now starting to get my level up a little bit, and I beat him in Detroit. And I remember when I beat him, I feel like it to me was one of the biggest wins that I ever had. It was something that I was very proud of, to beat not only somebody that I grew up sort of thinking about how great he was, but at this time he was 70 in the world, so it was really, really a great accomplishment for me. But what was better was the acknowledgement that he had for me, is that immediately he thought of me as a real player and someone to respect, and he invited me to Augusta to work with him and to practice with him. And I feel like that had a really great effect on my game, because I learned a lot from him. And then from there we actually became really, really good friends, and now we have a great friendship. And so that was a turning point, because I think in the early years we were competitive, and we didn't necessarily get along the best way for various reasons, but we worked that out. And then I think when he invited me to Augusta, it helped my game dramatically, and he taught me a lot about the game. And I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate everything that you did. So thank you. Christian, yeah. So Christian Lillard was here. He was one of my coaches that we had a great experience. One very fond memory I have is winning the U.S. National Championships with you as my coach. I remember not making the Olympic team in 2000 was pretty tough on me. I really, really wanted to make that team. Not making it was sort of devastating. I needed to take some time away from the sport. Took about a year off. I was going to work for my dad. I started school. I was very, very busy, and I remember getting pressure from Butterfly and some of my sponsors because I hadn't been playing. And they obviously wanted me to play in the Nationals, and very few people know this, but for an entire year, the only playing I did was with a guy that was about 70, 75 years old, coaching him. He was about 1,700. And that was about the only table tennis I played for about a year. I maintained my physical training. I actually was almost exclusively doing physical training. So my thought, whenever I approached Christian, I said, hey, I'm really, really going to need some help at this Nationals. I remember my only goal was to not lose in the first round. That was literally, I'm not even kidding you, my goal was to not be embarrassed in the first round and not embarrass my sponsors who had helped me so much. I just was not prepared. And just match by match, somehow I started gaining momentum and playing well, and next thing I know, we're working together, and we ended up winning the whole thing, and I think that was one of the greatest experiences that I ever had in my life, so I appreciate everything that you did for me. And then moving forward for the next 4 years, Christian gave me the opportunity to get an education, so he fully funded my experience at Wesleyan, and I got an undergraduate degree. He covered all of the expenses, and so that was something that was really, really great, so I appreciate all of that. So thank you very much for everything that you did. It was really, really great working with you. Another great experience was winning the gold medal at the Pan Am Games. That was something unbelievable. That was a lot of fun with Todd and David Zwang, and we didn't really, from my perspective, we just wanted to be competitive. We really had no idea that we were going to even have a chance to win the gold. But one thing about Danny is I've never had a coach that had that much fire behind you. So if you need somebody in your corner that's going to fire you up, there's no better player or no better coach than Danny. So I was going through that experience with him and seeing how happy he was and how invested he was something really, really great. And when you see that, you can't help but fire yourself up and give everything. So there's no way we could have won that gold medal without Danny's help. So I appreciate everything. So just a couple other people. One person, John Bosica, he can't be here, but he had a very profound impact on my career. I spent a couple years with him at the Oak Brook Training Center. Working with him was really, really great. I was living with Randy in Sweden on top of a nightclub, which was a terrible decision, so I needed to get out of there. So I decided, I remember calling the USATT thinking, hey, I need to go somewhere. I cannot live with Randy Cohen anymore. This is a complete disaster. And so I remember them saying that there's a training center in Flint, Michigan. There's a coach, a former Yugoslavian coach, a coach Lupulescu. The only problem is it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to do but play table tennis. And I said, perfect, I'll take it. Because that's exactly what I needed. And I lived there for 4 years, and I think it had a dramatic effect on everything. And so John Bosica, I've already talked to him. He knows what a great impact he had on my life, so I wanted to acknowledge him, and he's a really, really great guy. Last, and I wanted to talk to, I acknowledge Scott Price. It's been great having him as a friend and doing all of the exhibitions throughout my entire life. We had a lot of great times, many of which I cannot talk about here, for sure. But we had a lot of great memories, so thank you very, very much, Scott. And then Larry Hodges, I appreciate, I still remember being in North Carolina and him inviting me to the Olympic Training Center when I was around 12 or 13 years old. And just being around all the top players there, being around Sean O'Neill at that time, I remember I was young, I didn't have a lot of discipline, and I remember observing how disciplined Sean was. And that I knew at some point I would have to do that and to be a successful player. And so being around Sean and a lot of the other guys that were older and better, they had a profound effect. I don't know if they really know what an effect they had on me because I was young and stubborn and sort of bratty, but I want to acknowledge you guys, that you guys had a very big impact on everything. So I wanted to congratulate, or thank all of you. It's Larry and Sean. There's everybody on my list, so I want to thank you guys for everything, and I won't take too much of your time because I know it's getting late. So thank you.